Welcome to the Orykl Podcast, where we ask the big question: Hey, universe, what's going on? I'm your host, Huenu Solsona, and today we are exploring another fascinating spiritual journey. Let's get started. Welcome, everyone. It's Huenu Solsona with the Orykl Podcast. Hey, universe, what's going on? And today we have Peter Panagore joining us. He's going to share his story of his near-death experience and what that was like for him. So, Peter, welcome and thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Wayne. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. So, Peter, I'm always fascinated by NDEs, near-death experiences. So, and I love to hear about them. So I'm going to really hand over to you. Maybe you can tell us where you were, what happened, and what this experience was all like for you. So go ahead, the
I w
mic's all yours.
Thank you. I was 20 years old. I was in Western Canada in the Rocky Mountains in March and about 10 feet of snow. I was on a 10-day snow caving backcountry ski trip and 1 day ice climb. And I'll tell everybody that this was not my first wilderness experience. It was the deepest one I'd ever had, but I'd spend my childhood, youth, college, growing up backpacking and camping in all sorts of weather and all sorts of seasons. But I made a mistake on this trip on the ice climb. I had never been ice climbing before. I'd been mountaineering and used ice axes, but not on a climb. I'd been rock climbing and those sorts of things, but I didn't have all the gear that I needed. And so I came up with an axe and a hammer. And if you've ever seen a video of ice climbing, you need two axes, but I didn't have those. And so I climbed with essentially a hammer that was maybe this big and an axe that was about that big, which meant my ascent was significantly slower because of the pace. Not that my pace was slower, but also my stride was shorter. So by the time we were three-quarters of the way up, we knew that we were in serious trouble. And I should also add that my climbing partner was a certified lead climber on ice. So he was skilled. And as I mentioned, I was an outdoor person. And I had also been on the National Ski Patrol since I was in high school. So outdoor guy, first aid. By the time we reached the top of the climb, the sun set, temperature dropped about 30 degrees. We knew that we were in a grave, literally a grave situation. Our lives were in deep danger. We had three rappel pitches to descend. It was about 500 feet up, and the temperature dropped probably 30 degrees in minutes, which created a rapid onset of hypothermia, which advanced through the night. I'm going to speed through this high adventure. It's such a high adventure element of my NDE that I compare it to those high Himalaya movies that are made of ice climbers. It was that desperate.
Right.
We were terrified. We were fighting against the cold and our own lack of energy and the night and the danger of being on the cliff. And by the time we reached the third rappel, we fought our way across the mountain. Our hypothermia and frostbite had advanced significantly. Uh, Hypothermia steals your brain. It makes for confusion and poor decisions. It freezes the muscles so that everything it takes extra effort to move because it's sort of like a difference between a liquid and a gel. My muscles became like a gel, very not a lot of viscosity, just and I had to use a lot of mental focus. Plus, I was taking my mental focus to contain my fear. So I took my fear and I set it off to the side and I crushed it under an iron fist of willful grip so that I would not panic because panic in the wilderness will kill you. So by the time we reached the third rappel, our hypothermia was very advanced, and our I had frostbite. I had frostbite on my nose, my chin, my cheeks, my every extremity that was sticking out, and my feet were frozen cold as like ice on fire. It burns. So that's just a little bit of the setup. Now it's sometime before dawn, a few hours before dawn. We've been fighting our way across the mountain for now almost coming up on 24 hours. We were exhausted. We had water because there was ice we could put in our mouth and melt it, but we had no food. And I was a skinny 20-year-old with no extra fat on my body to consume. And there was a point at which I felt like my body was eating itself in order to provide the energy. So I had this pressure of the continual drop of the temperature, this lack of energy, and this need to use up the energy that I had to stay warm. And we were very aware of that. So, having sped this story along, we're standing on this ledge, and there are iron pins epoxied into the mountain with straps. And so we're hooked into the mountain for the first time all night, relatively safe from falling, but relatively safe because we still have frostbite. I had the rope. I tied one end of the rope to my harness. I took the other end and I threw it out around this corner that we had just descended down this crag, and there was this bend in the mountain. We're on this ledge, and I threw it out around the corner, and I pulled on it. And the first pull, it stuck somewhere up above. The rope jammed, and the more I pulled it, the tighter the jam became, which meant now we were stuck. Couldn't ascend, couldn't descend. We were absolutely alone. This is the middle of, oh, I should describe this a little bit. This is on the Icefields Parkway, north of Banff, south of Jasper. It's most beautiful. The mountains are huge and gorgeous, but it's the middle of nowhere. Even though there's a parkway down there, there is nobody around.
I
So
have
there
been
was
there.
nobody.
Exactly what you
Uh,
mean. I have been there.
I,
Yeah.
they are
Okay. Yes,
fantastic.
yes, yes. Nothing around. Okay, I got you.
And so we knew at that point that no one was going to come rescue us, and we were stuck. And I came to the realization that I was going to die, that I knew that I might die. Now I knew that I was going to die. And we were contained inside our own brains at this point. I wasn't really paying attention to Tim much. I was only paying attention to the rope and myself. So the rope is stuck. I unzipped my coat because I got hot, which is one of the hypothermic things that happens. You feel like you get hot, and which, of course, when you unzip your coat and you're really cold, you lose your heat faster. So I was losing heat more rapidly, and I didn't care. And I reached this realization that I was going to die. And when I did that, my willpower for survival dissipated. It just went away. And I had a peace settle on me, an acceptance, a surrender. And I started thinking about my family, my mom and my dad. My sister had run away, destroyed my family in a lot of ways. I thought, I'm like, they're going to lose another kid. And I started thinking about God. I'd been raised Roman Catholic and Greek Orthodox, these two churches that have been fighting each other for 1,000 years. And so I had a religious background and a mystical disposition from childhood, all of that in one little package. And I began to fall asleep, which is the final stage. I'd fall asleep, I'd slump down to the rock, I'd smack my shoulder, my head, had a helmet on, and stand back up and pull on the rope. And that happened a few times. And then I stood back up this final time. And this time I had a big black ring around my peripheral vision. And it was a tunnel. I'd read about tunnel vision, but I had no idea what it looked like. As it collapsed, the majority of my vision became black, and it got smaller and smaller and smaller. And I was confused. I didn't understand how my brain could be doing this. And as I was looking around, I could see like through a paper towel tube. And as it got smaller and smaller and smaller, I started thinking, am I falling asleep? Is this sleep? And then when it went out, instead of falling asleep, I awoke. It went out and I awoke. And now my, I was thinking, if I'm falling asleep, I'm going to collapse. But as this thing went out, I felt like I was standing, and the mountain had disappeared. I had consciousness. I felt like I was partway out of my body, and there was this deep darkness in front of me, but it wasn't a darkness like click out the light, all the shades are down, can't see your hand in front of your face darkness. It was that plus there was a depth to it. I could see, so it had some sort of dimensionality to it. And it was a velvety darkness. I wasn't scared at all. I was mostly confused because I didn't understand exactly what was happening. And then far in the far distance, this tiny star appeared, and the star was white and it was the size of a pinprick. And it appeared, drew all of my attention, and then it rushed toward me across this vast space at hyper speed, filling my vision and communicating to me without language, I'm taking you, you're coming with me. At which point I said, no, I'm not going anywhere, put up my willpower, and it just snatched me out. There's a lot of things that happen in my NDE. It's lengthy. I'll do my best to cover all of them, but it was a long experience. So I'm inside of this angelic being, but it's not like a wings and a sword. It's an intelligence that is all powerful compared to me. And I'm like a little rag doll inside of this entity in the middle of it, and I got swooped back up the direction it had come down, carried, and I felt myself severed from my body. I'd been out of my body as a child in other mystical experiences, and had always had this connection to it. But this time that was snipped. There was no, I wasn't connected to it anymore. And my shape was still hominid, but I was made not of molecules, but of light, and all of this is metaphors. My intelligence was present. My personhood was present, but I wasn't Peter anymore. This angelic entity was feeding me comfort directly. So this whole thing was filled with comfort and it was all aimed at me. So I was completely unafraid. And I had this sense that it was a part of something much larger, a sort of a subset in direct communication with an infinite. And I could sense the infinite, but the power of it, hyper intelligent, hyper powerful, um, hyper comfortable, and it was swooping me back up, and I could see through it. And I had this second perception. So I had two points of view. I had the view from inside this angelic being that I could see through this transparency into the velvety darkness. But I was also like an eyeball outside of this, of myself and the angelic being, like second sight, only I was the eye of God seeing me inside being swooped up. And so I had this, and that sense of me was a lot more, a lot, a lot less specifically limited and a lot more largely ethereal. But I could see this inside of myself, but I couldn't, when I looked, I couldn't see myself seeing me. I could only see myself seeing me inside of me. So I had these two perspectives, kind of like lizards that have two eyeballs and go in different directions, and can see. So that's kind of what was going on inside. And I get swooped up to the edge of this, where the pinprick of the starlight had appeared to me, and there was a barrier through which I was ejected into a much larger, uh, universal sized, empty nothingness, darkness. And when I say nothingness, I mean no electrons, no molecules, no neutrons or protons. There is nothing there that is a thing of which we can talk about here on Earth. It's a no thingness. And my self expanded, and now I was the size of this angelic being. And I was utterly alone in this universe size of illuminated darkness, as if the darkness itself was projecting out an inner illumination that made it possible for me to see, but there was nothing there. And yet I could see further than I could see. I could just see billions of light years if there were such a thing there. And on the very edge of my vision was a deeper darkness that I couldn't see into, that I knew was infinity itself. I In this space, I became self-aware of my original self. And I understood that this had always been me, and that I had been living inside of a physical form that had been more like a rental unit than my actual self. And that once I was outside of that rental unit, I had returned to my original nature, and I knew myself as this, self-evidently knew this is me, that was not me. And I am content. I'm utterly alone, and I am not afraid. I just am, I don't want to say joyous, but I was pain-free, no suffering at all. And as I'm in this space looking in 10,000 different directions at once, where my consciousness was my feeling, was my thinking, was my physical structure. So I talk about it as if I had a physical structure, still no thingness, but I had this energy form like an orb of consciousness that contained all of me. So there was no separation between nose and teeth. They were the same thing as thought and action. They were one. And so I'm in this space, and I'm content. And then out of the deepest darkness, there's a ripping open, and through this tear in the deep darkness, this light pours out, and it's gigantic comparison to me. It's still smaller than the space I'm in, but it's big compared to me. And it's the most beautiful. I don't know. There's the beauty. The word beauty does not do it justice. It's the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen in my life. Although, okay, so I was not a human being. This light was simultaneously white and singular, and a septillion different colors of individual particles, like all of the beautiful. If you've been to the up to the to Alberta, and you've been in, or if anybody's been in a place where there's no light pollution on a starry night with no moon, that many colors, that many stars, that many particles. But it wasn't just all the colors that I couldn't see with my human eye. I could see all of the other wavelengths of electromagnetic spectrum and so much more. And each of these pixelizations were in entanglement with them, all of them, and they were individually separate, but as an entangled oneness, they were white light. So they were all of us, them, many, and one singular at the same time, not flipping back and forth, but together. And it was had a like a flow to it, and out of this flow, all life was pouring. All life itself was pouring. And I could see the surface of it. I could see that it was translucent. I could see into it. I could see not just a surface layer of these pixelizations or the white light. I could see into the depth of it, and I could see through it. And the transparency beyond it was like a tunnel that led into the deeper darkness. And it was so beautiful that I wanted it in the instant that I saw it, and my thought became my action and my motion. And I moved toward it as I thought it, and I touched it with my being because I wanted it. And it tore me open and poured inside me and pulled me inside itself and inflated me inside it. And I'm inside, and I have of timelessness. I should throw this into it's all timelessness. I had a series of experiences, and I'm going to say them as rapidly as I can. I went through a life review, and in my life review, I suffered all of the pain that I'd given everyone in my entire life from inside of them, feeling their thoughts and emotions as if I was them. At the same time, I was me. I had the Peter that I had been, feeling all of my thoughts and experiences. And I had this understanding of my limited nature, my radical equality to all humanity, the unlimited nature of the divine, and I judged myself. I wasn't judged. I was only beloved. I was always loved. I love you. I love you. I forgive you. I love you. Welcome. Accept me. Be with me. And I had this simultaneous experience where the less dark parts of me were illuminated by this eye of the divine that could see all of me, while I could hear my soul name being called into being in the now, but also always, evermore, ever before. And it was creating me. I felt like a creature made by creator, made of creator, but made by creator. And when I listened to the love on offer to me, I ceased to be attached to my own selfish nature and the wounds that I had caused everyone, which had attached to me. They were much bigger than what I thought I was giving away in pain, and they were mine. And I felt shame in comparison to purity with a capital P. But when I listened with the ear of love, I could hear that I was beloved. And when I could hear that I was beloved, I ceased to be attached to my own limited nature, and all of that went away. All of my suffering was eliminated. I was inflated and infilled with beauty and joy, peace, wellness, wholeness, truth, understanding, intelligence, mercy, welcome, bliss, paradise, awe. It's a very long list. And all of these higher ideals of our that we have in our humanity, they were all united in one thing. They weren't separate truth over here and charity over here. They were one thing. So they were these individual things and one thing at the same time. And I was inflated with bliss beyond my capacity for explanation. And I reached this point at which I was fully inflated and no longer myself as a human being at all. I had divine co-communion. I was made of the light itself. And in this space, I had this series of visions or experiences. And I understood myself not only to be expansive, to be singular. I was a singular particle as well. And I was um, entangled with this field of them, of these particles. But I was also, because I don't know why, but I was outside of this field, but there was like a cable that connected me to them, and they were all connected to each other. And it was depth and width and breadth that was infinite in nature. And I was, and the Bible, it talks about in the image of God. I was that. I was uh, a portion of it, and yet somehow also outside of it. And so I experienced this place of mm, deep unitive connection to the fullness of the divine. And while I was in this state as like a singular photon and connected to all this field of photons, I saw below myself my soul being called into being again. And it was emerging from the deeper darkness like a long tube. And this long tube has spent a long period of time with just itself. And then there was this whole series inside of the tube of myself, all these many, many lives I had lived. And they were still happening while I watched them. And there was this chronology to them going back in what would be time, but I'm not in time, I'm outside of time. And I can see that all of them were like little tiny olives inside a much larger loaf of bread. And that they weren't the bread itself, they were these little treasures inside the bread that you bite into. You're like, yeah, there's the olive. Um, but they weren't I but the bread wasn't the olive. They were interactive, but I was the bread and my higher self. And I wanted to see into a couple of lives. And so I was flown, I felt like I was flown down. This angelic being kind of collected me and flew me down. And I entered into two lives. One of them was human, ancient, a foreign language. Another was like some kind of little tiny lizardy animal hiding from a predator in the shadows of leaves. And
On Earth or in another
on
planet.
I assume it was on Earth, everything, because the eyes of this, when I was in the human man's body, everything it was old. I could see that it was old and it was a different language and all that stuff, but I was definitely still human. But this other creature, I don't know where I was or what I was. I had a teeny tiny brain. So even when I was inside of it, I couldn't think much with it. I knew predator, I knew stillness. My eyes were seeing different light and different shapes of where I was. So I assume I was on Earth, but I don't know that. There are aspects of my NDE that are still dark to me because the experience can't fit inside my brain. And so if some of it comes in, most of it stays out. So I have this experience of these incarnations and I'm pulled back out of this and then I'm again sort of reduced back down to a more connective space where I perceived my just previous life. And I started thinking about my parents and the loss. What about my parents? At first I say, am I dead? And the voice says, yes, you're dead. And the voice is everything there is. This is not just like an entity over here in the space that that entity is in. It's the space is inside of the entity itself. So everything there is made of the source itself. And and so I get reduced down to a more human-sized scale, and I say, "Am I dead?" And the voice says, "Yes, you're dead." And I say, "What about my parents?" And I'm swept across this universe-sized womb of God to this place where there's like this field of energy that where a part of me comes out of, and I can see our universe. Part of me is inside of our universe in live time, and most of me, 90% of me, 99, is still inside this belly of the divine. And so my head is in, or if I had a head, which I didn't, my perception is inside of the universe, and I can see a quadrillion galaxies and stars, and I have this sense of vastness, and my attention is turned toward the now of the always beginning, always present. And I can see out of this deeper darkness, this infinity, which is beyond my capacity for grasping. The light is pouring, which I can grasp. And it grasps because it grasps me. So this light is pouring out of this deep darkness and weaving itself, sort of layering itself into the matter of our universe, so that everything inside the universe is perceivable to me to being made of the light itself, and that nothing is separate from that. And that it is, so there's like a darkness that's woven around the light to create the matter. And I can see that and sense that all things are made of this outpouring of love. And from the deeper darkness, as this light is being continually pouring out, and there I can see how it's weaving into this matter, and all of the universe, our universe, has this structure, substructure, substrata inside of it. There is all of these other universes are popping out of the darkness, like one after the other, and they're kind of flying upward, and they're outside of my perception once they fly up, but I have this sense of the largesse. And so there's this massive space of light and love that has been woven into multidimensionality, multiple universes, all made of the same substance. All of it, all of it aimed at me like through a lens. All of this is made out of love. And the place that most of me is still in, this heaven that I'm inside of, all of this vastness is then kind of pulled into one beam of love, of unconditional, infinite love, and aimed at me. And I understand that all has been well, all is well, all will be well because of this infinite love, that everything is made of it and nothing is lost to it because it loves itself. It loves itself, and I am the most beloved there was. And as I'm experiencing this most belovedness, my vision is then shifted to Earth, and I can see Earth like a hologram and all human beings on it. And inside of every single human being, I can see this golden light that is woven into all matter. And I can see it in the people perpetrating evil, and I can see it in the people being good. I can see it in every single human being simultaneously. But there's this foam over the earth, and nobody can see it except for me. And even though it's plain to see that love and light is inside of everyone. And the voice then says to me, in the way that I love you now, I have always loved you, and I love every single one of them because they are me. I love myself. And there was this uniqueness, and I know that unique means only one thing, but there was this particularity, uniqueness of the love for me that was the same for everybody else. Is that there was this a massive amount of love, unconditional and infinite, and personal. Like I knew that I was known by the knower. The was the same love inside of everybody else. And then I saw my mom and my dad. Their faces rose up from earth, and I saw their lives with me if I were to go back, and I saw their lives without me. And I understood my own length of my human life with snap of a finger, and that I could see that their afterlife was the same as mine, that they would be in this bliss. And the voice was saying to me, come home, it's time for you to come home, or go back if you want to, kind of. And so I say, if I go back to be with my parents, because I saw this comparison of suffering. So they were going to suffer with me living, but their lives were going to be exploded and destroyed if I were not there. And so I said, well, the length of my life is the wink of an eye. How bad can it be to go back? I said, if I go back, can I come back here? And the voice said, yes. So I say, I choose to live my life. And it says, you won't live your life, and throws me out. And as I go out, I'm given, there's like all of these doorways that I could choose from for the life that I could live. And in the middle of all of these doorways is a beam of white light. And the voice says to me, choose light, choose a life. And I choose rapidly. I know that it wanted me to choose just the light, but I wanted to be human like other people. And so I chose ideas of my life, and I was in a radiant aspect of this white light, but not in the beam itself. I was in a sort of the outer, not the outer edges, but in the illumination, but not in the intensity. And then I went down this tunnel, and in this tunnel, there were all these doorways, and all these doorways led to all these other lives that I did not choose, but all of there were all potentialities for the life that I would live. And I get to the
And
end of this tunnel
As Peter, you had these
as
options.
Peter.
Peter. Okay.
As Peter. And so there was like a million doorways, a million tunnels of the ways that I could live my life. And all of them were interconnected through all these doors that I could move between any one of them. But I went down this tunnel all through choice. And I went down this tunnel, and at the end of this tunnel, I saw a body on a cliff with two bodies, one bent over this other one, very dispassionate observation. Oh, look at this scene, what's going on here? And then this angelic being uh, pierced the chest of the prone one and opened it and smushed me down to like a condensed, taking all the air out of my balloon and made me a tight little ball and shoved me inside this thing. And I was inside what felt like a sarcophagus to me. Like, in those Middle Ages, they had those torture things with the spikes, and they put it looks like a human being. That's what it's like. Oh my God, what is this thing? Why does it hurt so much?
Right.
And then I could see through this slit in the chest, like an eye into this other realm. I could see the angelic being. I could see the darkness where heaven began, and then that eye closed, and my brain came back, started to come back online, which brought increased suffering because I could feel all of the pain of the body, and my hearing returned, and my partner Tim was shouting at me, don't die, don't die, don't die, don't die, and screaming and crying and wailing. And I opened my eyes, and he's still yelling it, don't die, don't die, don't die. And I'm looking at his face, and he's surprised to see me awake. He says, you're alive. I thought you were dead. You're going to die. I'm going to die. And he pulls me up, and I became an entirely different person. I should tell you how we self-rescued. So he pulls me up. He's talking to me. I don't know who he is. I don't know what's going on for a while. Finally, I kind of understand what's going on, and then he convinces me to pull the rope. I pull the rope. It releases. We descend because the ice field, because this climb is right on the ice fields parkway. Our car is at the base. We get out our tent. We self-treat for hypothermia to the point at which we can get back in the car and turn on the heater. So we didn't want to rush the temperature. And I was entrapped inside a body in a world that was entirely different than the one I had just left. I didn't know where I had been. I knew that I was completely transformed. I was lost. Everything had an illumination to it, but it was also thin and frail and fake to me. Even me, especially me. And I came back an entirely different person. And I looked the same and spoke the same, but I was not the same at all.
Oh, my goodness. That's incredible. That's absolutely fascinating. Now, how do you how do you take that and then go back to living a normal life? Did you tell a
I,
lot of people from the
I
beginning or no?
didn't tell anybody. This was 1980, and I didn't know what happened to me. And I come from an intelligent, rational, critical thinking, analytical family.
Yeah.
And so even though it was a family that had faith, I didn't understand what happened to me, but I knew enough that until I was able to speak about it intelligently, that I shouldn't talk about it at all. And because my interior, I came back with this loud noise inside of me. I could still feel the flow. This light flow was still flowing through me, dominating me, and loudly, like the roar of a waterfall where you can't hear the person standing next to you. All you can hear is the sound of the waterfall, and it's simultaneously deafening and beautiful and disorienting. And so I decided that I wasn't going to tell anybody. I was fortunate when I went to a Catholic high school and I learned centering prayer meditation. This is back in the 70s. And centering prayer came out of the Theravada Buddhist tradition combined with the Catholic mystical tradition. And there was a monastery near my school where this was developed. And so I had this, I knew my interior world a little bit because I'd been practicing for 4 or 5 years at this point on a regular basis. And I was in a theater troupe at this university, and we left almost immediately on a 10-week tour. So I isolated myself. This is how I dealt with it. I isolated myself. I brought my sleeping bag and my sleeping pad, and I put myself in the back of the pickup truck that was towing the trailer with all our equipment in it. And I never rode in the 15-passenger van. I stayed by myself and I meditated all the time because I was trying to figure out what had happened to me. And so I kept it a secret, and I realized I was an English major, and in New England, where I'm from, in New England, United States, we had these writers called the Transcendentalists back at the turn of century or two ago, and the British Romantic poets. I had read them and understood that there was spirituality beyond religion, and so it led me to an exploration of mysticism. I changed my graduate school from architecture, which is what I was going to do, going to the family business, to divinity school at Yale University to study mysticism. I had a 3-year independent study under the dean who allowed me to go very deeply in depth in Western Christian mysticism, Eastern Christian mysticism as well. Um, and I found my peer group among those who had high level mystical experiences because I understood them. I kept my mouth, I kept this a secret for 20 years.
You kept this a secret, but now you knew anyway that you had died, right? I mean that you that yes, and you had not heard or met anybody who had had a similar experience, and for 20 years neither. You just kept it. And after 20 years, what happened that you decided to come out with it?
Well, I had chosen to hide inside a liberal denomination of the Christian faith because I needed to have cover. I needed to earn a living. I needed to continuing to practice my Kriya. I was practicing Kriya Yoga from the Yoga Sutras in combination with Hatha Yoga and my centering meditation practice, all of which could be, even though not endorsed by the denominations, accepted as, okay, he's spending time in prayer. And also I could continue my mystical studies under the cover of the church, because I was a non-believer. I should say that too. This completely obliterated all my belief systems. So there was a big, huge embezzlement in this church. It was a wealthy resort town on the coast, sailing and boats and that kind of thing. And there was a long, decades-long embezzlement that we helped uncover, that during the whole process of the discovery, those who were colluding with the perpetrator tried to destroy me personally, publicly, financially, professionally, tried to get me kicked out of the denomination, tried anything that they could do to stop me. And in the end, once we found the truth, we found the colluders and we found the perpetrator. There was conviction, like legal conviction, and at the end of that, the church leaders these people had turned the church against me for the most part. Probably 80 to 90% of the people wanted to destroy me. But in the end, once we found what was actually going on, one Sunday morning, the deacons came up to me and said, "We're sorry for what we did to you. You must have had a lot of faith to endure what we put you through." And it was public. It was very public in my town. It was public in my state. It became statewide news. And on that Sunday, when they said that we're sorry for what we did to you, I decided that I would tell them the truth, that I didn't have any faith at all. And that's why I was able to do what I did, because they weren't really my boss. I didn't work for them. My interior connection to source is my how I live in the world, and that I had to tell them the truth. And so that Sunday morning, I told them the truth. And I came out to the church and I said, "This is why I was able to do what I did with you." It took a long time. It took about 9 years to go through this, and it was bloody and brutal. I mean, I didn't get hit and I wasn't bleeding, but it was very, very difficult. And once I came out to the congregation, because I finally believed that I could trust them. At this point, my wife knew, my childhood best friend knew, and my Yale best friend knew. So 3 other people in the world knew this about me, but I couldn't.
Never told your parents.
Oh, and I didn't tell my parents. No freaking way. Um, because no, because they were not going to be able to. My dad died 3 years ago, not really believing me. And so I tell people, when you know that you're going to be looked at with crossed-eyed, what's this guy doing? What happened to him? They knew what I couldn't hide was my behavior
Right.
and my thinking process. It wasn't a secret. It was a secret what happened to me, but my eccentricities spilled out all over the place. My family knew that I was different. I came back from that experience, and my parents knew that something had changed.
Yeah. And tell me, maybe like we'll wrap it up soon, but have you had people around you? Say your father passed away 3 years ago. How do you how do you take that? I mean, you know your dad's passed away. You kind of know that he's in a good place. And other people perhaps that have passed near you. Do you maybe talk to them and share your experience? Do you help people along? And how do you also look at your own death, as it's, one day gonna be here for all of us?
I'm excited about my own death. I died again in 2015 of a heart attack, a widowmaker heart attack, and it's a fairly short story, but I won't tell it. It was one of the best days of my life. It was like, I am finally going home. I'm out of this place. And my dad came back to me a few months after he died and showed himself to me, that he was in wellness. But I already knew that he was in wellness because I saw it after he died. And when my sister, who had run away from my family, which for us was experienced as abandonment and estrangement, and devastating to my mom, who blamed herself. Uh, I grieved for my sister when I found out that she had died back in 2007. I collapsed to the floor when the phone call came because I missed her and I loved her. I still experience grief, but it's not so harsh for me. I know that they're well. I understand unconditional love. I understand. I know that I'm not a human being. There's not a moment of my life that I don't experience my higher self being the dominant nature of my being. And I perceive that in every single person that I meet. It's not like I try to look into you and see this. It's just self-evident. There it is. It's everywhere I am. Everything is totally temporary. And although I still experience suffering, I am out of here at some point.
Yeah.
And I'm anticipatory. I'm between my first NDE and my second one in 2015. I prayed every day for my own death, that I had made a mistake coming back. I didn't want to be here. Um, After my second death, I decided it wasn't so much a decision as it was a recognition of, well, I've only probably got about 3 decades left after this. It's okay. I can do this. And I chose to come back the second time too, which is nutsy after I've been praying for my own death for 20 years.
Yeah, yeah. And so why do you think we come to have this experience?
Here on earth, alive,
Yeah.
I think we are the divine experiencing limitation. So there's a rabbinic question, and the question is, what is the one thing that the unlimited can't experience? Limitation. And so there is this, uh, when I was in my life review, there wasn't like someone with a pen writing in the book of life and a quill pen, St. Peter up there, or somebody typing into the Akashic records and filing it in the library database. The divine was me,
Yes.
is me, and is experienced every moment of my life as me. So I seem to be some sort of extension of this unlimited nature, seeing, experiencing not just our humanity, because we're very self-centered. We're always thinking about, why am I alive? If you just look around, you see bears and moose and lions and dolphins, and then because of astronomy, we know that there are 10 quadrillion in a space this big from the James Webb. There are 10 quadrillion galaxies and lots of planets, lots of stars, a lot of life out there. It's not just us. This whole expanse of this universe and all of these universes that are pouring out of the darkness, creating itself to experience more. And I know that that's a paradoxical contradiction, because how can the unlimited not know what limitation is? When I think of why I'm here, my ultimate purpose is to bring the light to myself while I'm here and to love the best I can. So in the way as I love, I'm loving itself.
Wow, Peter, I think we could keep talking for another 2 hours. At least I could, but we're going to have to wrap it up. It's been honestly fascinating. I've truly enjoyed listening to you. Do you have any parting words for those listening?
Yes, love the one you're with, love the people around you, accept love. It's the treasure of life and the treasure of heaven. And you can find me at peterpanagore.love.
Beautiful. We'll put all those links below. And really, truly appreciate your time. Thank you for sharing your story. And thank you for coming back twice. And hopefully we'll get to chat to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, Wehu.